Anybody 2017 plans to go to third world, right? That'd be interesting, right? But on a side note, we do offer opportunities to go to places like that, and it's called mission trips. And they're not like that. They're very life-giving. I know for me, when I was a teenager, I think it was 16, I think, was the first time I ever went on a missions trip, and that changed my life forever. And so I've been to 3 total. Can't wait to go to another one. So if that sounds interesting, that's the best, one of the best kind of vacations you could do is a missions trip. So, but anybody can relate to a little bit of those ungrateful kids. How many of us were ever ungrateful, right? Or were you just ever, like, you were always perfect, right? No matter what gift somebody gave you, you were super excited. You loved it. It was like, oh, this is the best ever. Thank you. No. Let's be honest, right? I mean, there's times that I'm pretty sure you've given a gift to someone and you didn't get the reaction that you were hoping for, all right? Or vice versa. Or then, I mean, isn't it awkward, like, when you get a gift and it's, let's say it's just, oh, thanks. And immediately, you're trying not to communicate to them that you're already thinking of what store you can go return this one in, right, or whatever. Or who you can gift it to. Like, I got a Christmas party in a week. I'll do it then, right? I could just give it away, right? And so I know it's very hard. I know sometimes we don't react the way we always would love to do. I mean, I know for me one time, the one thing that I didn't appreciate and I did not show any gratitude was towards my grandparents, especially my grandmother, because there was one thing that she would always get me. My grandma, when I was a kid, even now, she gives me some good gifts. She's awesome. She's I've had her 2. One passed away a couple years ago. Both of them were amazing ladies. One's still alive. She's like 85. And every year, regardless of the good gifts, I knew that in the pile of it, there was going to be one of them that would be socks. All right? Anybody get one? It's like socks. My grandmother always got me socks for Christmas. Anybody had a grandma like that or a mom every time? Anybody? Always, man. She gave me socks, and I knew it was coming. So I was never excited. I mean, I could pick the gift out from across the room. I'm like, that's the one right there. There's the socks right there. I was like, let me just get that one over with first, right? Like, and it's trying to, how can you show a little bit of gratitude? I'm like, all right, next, where's the toys, right? And so, but I knew I was never excited when I opened up the socks. I was never surprised. I knew it was happening until the year that she didn't get me any. That, flipped me up. Almost it, wasn't Christmas for a minute. I'm like, where's my socks? Is it over there? Where'd they go? Where are my socks? And I didn't realize how dependent I became on my grandmother supplying every year my socks until the year came when she didn't give me any. And then I'm like, wow, I started to realize that I would always be low on socks around Christmas. I would wear through all of them throughout the year, right? They would either have holes or I would just have 20 pairs of just one sock, right? I don't know where the other pair is. And you don't want to throw away that one sock. Because when you throw away that one sock, then the other pair pops up. And I'm like, oh, hey, I'm here now. Where's my buddy? Where's my pair? I threw you away, right? And so you never want to do that. And so I never realized how dependent I was on those gifts until the day she didn't give them to me. And then even though these socks was something that I really didn't want, it was something that I needed, right? It's not necessarily what I wanted, but it was something that I needed. And so one of the things that we're doing, guys, right now, we just started a series last week. We're going to wrap it up next week, and it's called Mas, right? How to get more out of Christmas. And so, yes, I am manipulating the original word Christmas, right? The root of the history of the word comes from the Mass of Christ, right? Something that was a Catholic tradition where Christmas was spent traditionally in fasting and prayer, and then you would go to a midnight service around there, and then after that, you would break the fast, have a big party, off to your houses to enjoy the rest of Christmas. But what we're doing is, I love the fact, because when I look at Christmas being Hispanic, I see 2 words in there. I see an English word, and I see a Spanish word in the word Christmas. Obviously, we see the word Christ, and those last 3 little words is the word up here you can see highlighted is mas. And that is a Spanish word which means more, or which means to add or to plus. And so, which again, I thought how interesting. Around Christmas, right, it's the December, it's the end of the year, and it just seems like that is the time of year that we have more things in our calendar than ever before, right? It's a time that we probably spend more time out of the house than all year, right? And we spend way more money than we normally do, right, compared to all those other 11 months. And so there's a lot going on. There's so much going on in this month that, to me, what we were talking about last week is that we want to make sure, out of all the things that you do, Okay, whether you watch the Christmas classics, right, or you don't watch Christmas movies if you don't like them, whether you go to the Christmas parties or whatever you do, right, if you like this and like that, you listen to music, you hate it, whatever it is, okay, because I know there's a big debates on how do Christians celebrate Christmas, what do we do, what not to do, stuff like that, but the most important thing, regardless of your preference, is this one thing, and we talked about last week, and we're going to continue for today and tomorrow, or next week, is this. Depends on what, regardless of what else is going on more in your life, you always want to make more out of Jesus. So that's why I love the word Christmas, because to me it's a reminder when I look at it, and I want you to always, when you hear the word Christmas, to always remember that we always need more of Christ, right? It's a little Spanglish there, right? So we need more of Christ. And so that's the biggest challenge that I'm giving you guys over the next couple weeks is more of him, because it might necessarily be what we want. Like deep down, we might think that, oh, we want this, or I want that, or I want that. But he is definitely what we need. And in reality, I think it's what we truly want. We just don't know it yet. But with this, guys, the most important thing is giving ourselves more to God and less of ourselves, right? And this time, Christmas time, it's a time where a lot of us, we like to focus more on ourselves. Let's just be honest, right? What we want to get, what we're hoping to get. We drop those little, hints of what we want, whether it be you bring up in conversation with your wife, you don't want to just say it. Or as a kid, I don't know if you guys ever did, some stuff like that, putting little clues everywhere around the house and what you wanted. I used to do some of that stuff. But there was this one thing that I got that fed my addiction to being selfish. The most selfish time in the year was when Christmas came along and my birthday, okay? Both those times I was the most selfish. And there was one thing, when it arrived in the mail, fed my addiction for a good little bit. And it was the old service merchandise catalog. Anybody remember that? Anybody remember that one? Now, sir, if you don't know, if you are under 30, you have no clue what I'm talking about, because this is pre-internet stuff, okay? So we read books, all right? We opened them up. It wasn't all digital, even though I got something like this now, right? It was a legit book. And so we had an old service merchandise here on Hillsborough, around here in Tampa, and there was some others as well. And I used to that thing came in the mail, oh my gosh, I was lost in that for days, just looking, because it was a massive catalog of everything Sears had, or in this case, service merchandise, had in inventory that you can see at their stores. So I would flip through it, and it had all of their toys. Oh, it was like, a quarter of it was just pure toys. So I would just dream and think, oh, what would I do with this? And oh my gosh. And I was just, folding, circling, right? Dog ears on the things, right? Ripping them out. And I would, share them here and drop them little hints with my mom, whatever. And I was so selfish, so paranoid even, that it was like, what if my parents want to go buy the gift and get the gift at service merchandise, and what if it's not there? Oh my gosh, it's like the end of the world. So to do my parents a favor, what I would do without them knowing, I don't think they still don't know yet, I would call all of the service merchandises in Tampa, Florida. I would call them all, and I would ask and confirm prices to make sure that it was what it is, and also to, check the inventory level on the shelf. Okay? And so what I would do, and I would call sometimes the same store, I would call twice in a day. So what I would do is I would disguise my voice, okay? I'm like 10, 9. I'm not like 16, okay? No, that would be embarrassing. That'd be embarrassing. I was like 11, or no, maybe 10, 9, around there. It's like late 80s, early 90s, whatever. And I would disguise my voice to be an adult and like, hello? Hi, I was wondering if you have the new Star Trek decoder thing. It was really sad, all right? It was really, really sad. But I would do that because I thought by disguising my voice, hopefully it'll throw them off my scent, just in case if, I'm like, oh, it's that kid again, okay? And so they start, rejecting my calls. And so whatever. But guys, look, all of that time that I spent, looking at the books, all that time I spent dreaming, all that time I spent on myself, it was a waste. I'll be honest. I wasted my time. I did. It wasted my time. I didn't become a better person for it. It was a lot of energy, a lot of effort, let's be honest, just wasted. And if we could be honest with ourselves, guys, when we serve ourselves, it might feel good for a moment. But if you think about it long term, it's like, it's just not enough. We constantly, if we want to try to find more and get more out of life by focusing on ourselves, we're actually going to find ourselves emptier than before. And so one of the most important ways, guys, that we can actually find this and get more, not waste all this effort on ourselves, is by taking this effort and putting it towards others. Because see, the bottom line and I've said this, if you've been here before, I've said this before, and so this will be a review. If not, this is your first time. This is great. You're going to hear it for the first time, okay? But to me, the way we get more out of life is to give more. Okay, that's the little bottom line there. So the way you get more out of life is to give more. Okay, you get more out of life when you give more. And so we're going to look at this part of the Bible. I'm going to give you technically a really quick summary of one entire book in the Bible. If you understand this one thing about this book, then when you read it, most of it will make sense. But it was the King Solomon. Okay, it was from him. He wrote this book called Ecclesiastes. He's actually written a few books in the Bible. He's credited with writing Proverbs, Songs of Solomon. Songs of Solomon was the young King Solomon. Songs of Songs, whatever, was the one that a young King Solomon wrote. Proverbs, here's, a more wiser king, right? He's writing things down. But Ecclesiastes is a little different. Ecclesiastes is the third of the trilogy. It's late in his life. And he wants to find the answer to this one question. How do you get more out of life? That's what he was looking for. How do you get more out of life? What should individuals, if we're here and if we're living for some predetermined amount of time, what should we focus all of our energy on so it's not wasted? How can we live life to the max, live life to the fullest, and get everything we want out of life? So, King Solomon actually, this is, we have this even modern day. We still do it, where people do social experiments. Have you ever seen people do that on YouTube now, right? They'll say, hey, I'm going to try this, and they live like this for like a year or two, and then they come back and put a video on or some blog posts, right? And some of them make careers off this, right? And they just experiment for something. They go crazy for like a year or two or 3 or 4 or whatever, and they live a certain way, then they document it, then they share it. This one guy, actually, which is kind of crazy, this one guy, he wasn't a Christian. He wanted to see what it would be like if you would live according to the Old Testament laws for a year. And so he did it. And it was, he would realize, he thought it was just going to be funny, kind of weird. He dressed the way you were supposed to, acted the way, behaved the way, all these things. It was an interesting thing. At the end, he realized, there was some things that I kind of walked into this kind of thing. It was going to be really silly, but I learned there was some of these little principles that were pretty good. But there was some that he really struggled with. He didn't know how to do it. Like, for example, one was how, because there were supposed to be sinners, and if you did certain things, you would have to stone them to death. So he's like, how do I live that without going to jail? How do I do that? So technically he said, well, it just says stone them. The Bible is not clear on the size of the stones. So he would run up to someone and they'd be like, hey, have you ever done this? And we were like, yes. So he would take a pebble, flick it right in their face and run. Yeah, that's what he would do. So he technically stoned them, but whatever. And so that was he lived it, and now, you can read about it and stuff like that. But Solomon, over, 3,000 years ago, did probably one of the first studies, social experiments. And what he did was that, how do you get more out of life? And he documents how he would do whatever his heart pulled him to, he did it. If it was sexual relationships, man, he went at it, all right? He had 300 wives, 700 concubines, all right? That's 1,000 side pieces, man. That's a lot. That's a lot to be able to handle and deal with, okay? And so he had a lot of them. And so he went for it, did it, all right? If it's that, great. Other things, what he would do, he would build cities. Like, he was like, all right, maybe if I can accomplish monuments. And when people would look at this building, they would always know it was me. So he built cities. He built massive buildings. And he did a lot of things like that. Then he went and built parks. Can you imagine, like, kind of Central Park or something like that? He built parks. He built irrigation systems. He did, amazing things. He pursued every single intellectual study known to man at the moment. If it was philosophy, it was philosophy. Physics, physics. Biology, biology. Plants, all of it. He studied it. Gardening. Doing things that no one in the world was doing with cross-pollinizations and stuff like this. It was amazing what he was doing. But he would do it all. Okay, maybe it's the intellectual stuff, so he ran with it and went full force. Okay, maybe it's the pleasure, so he went with the sex or abusing, substances and stuff like that. He just went for whatever. Maybe it's accomplishments. Maybe I can do that. So whatever he did, he gave all of himself. He gave to the max. But what was interesting was this entire time, and this study took years. And what was interesting was he's governing a nation the whole time he's doing this experiment. But also at the same time, even though he's giving himself completely to something, in his mind, he has never lost sight of why he's doing this. Why am I doing this? And he would do it and then analyze and look over everything. And he went and did it all. And then he says this amazing phrase at the beginning of the book. At the beginning of the social experiment, he pretty much lays out his findings. And so you can read it here in Ecclesiastes 1. It says this, I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, striving after the wind. He opens up the book of Ecclesiastes to talk about his personal experiment, social experiment. He says, look, hey, I've seen it all. I've done it all. I've owned it all. He actually even said he collected the biggest and largest amount of gold and silver, slaves and servants that any king had ever had before him. And he was competing. This was competition. And he did it. And in the end, he would just say, look, I've seen it all. I've done it all. Okay, I've owned it all. But in the end, it's like, but it wasn't enough. I did more than anyone had ever accomplished. Yet, it wasn't enough. It was, in his phrase, chasing after the wind. How would you ever catch the wind if you tried to chase it? And where do you know where it would go? It's pointless. It's a pointless exercise. And so here he did it on. That was his final findings right there. That's what he, to the end, would see. And he didn't hold anything back. And his conclusion was, the more you live life in this way, it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. And one of the problems, the problem was not in giving yourself to something. But in essence, he was kind of also saying, when you read the rest of the book, the problem was what he was giving himself to. Giving of yourself and giving your best, that's not the problem. The problem was giving himself to something, or to whatever was on the receiving end, was what mattered most. That's what mattered most. And so in the end, guys, even though this kind of sounds negative, this social experiment was actually a success. Because he, trying to seek out the one answer to how do you live life, he pretty much discovered how not to live. If you read the whole book of Ecclesiastes in detail, that's pretty much his case. He is laying out and saying, look, here's how you don't live life. If you want to get more out of life, don't do this. Don't follow that. And, think about it, because he was actually thinking all these things like, oh, what if it's the, let's say it's the body and the sexual pleasures, or just the emotional, physical pleasures. What if I do that? But then he started to think, well, what happens if that's what life is about? What happens when I get too old and I can't experience certain things anymore? So then now what am I going to do with my life, Or then what about the buildings? He was like, man, if I build these big monuments, right, people will always remember me, right? But then he started thinking, he was like, well, I can build a massive building, put all of my time and effort into it. But then what if some dude, after I'm gone, just decides to just tear it down and build another one? So all of that effort was for what? All of that effort was for what? Then all the gold, all the money, I was like, man, if I had the largest amount of gold, largest amount of money, I had it all. But then he thought about it. I was like, but when I die, I can't take it with me. So I'm going to work this hard and collect all this stuff. So what if my kids just blow it? What did I do? Then what did I do? What did I accomplish? You kind of see, it's kind of, when you think about things like that, it kind of puts this perspective of what am I doing with my life? If we put our focus on the wrong, even let's say it's work, man, we can accomplish and do some great things. And just if I can do this and I'll be known by this, but people will not even remember you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't even know my great-great-grandma's name. My great-great-grandfather. I only know one of them, and the only reason why I know his name is because it's the same as mine. I'm the fourth. And that's the only reason why I know his name. So I don't even know people in my own family. Isn't that crazy? And so we spend all this time, all this effort, grinding, hustling, for what in the end? And so he was saying, see, doing all of this, there's nothing in this world that can give you life. So he actually learned this is not how, this is how you don't live. But at the end of Ecclesiastes, he actually says the one thing that you ought to do. If you want to get more out of life, look what he says. He says this in Ecclesiastes 12. The end of the matter is this. Okay, here's the summary. Here's the point. It says this, all has been heard. You've heard me say it. I've laid it out. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So in essence, he's saying, look, we are to give ourselves to things. But the one thing that we should give ourselves the most to is God. the one thing we should give ourselves the most to, if we're going to give ourselves to anything, let it be to God more than anything else. That is our duty, that we follow his ways more than we do our own. He said that when you live that way, that's how you really start to live. When you begin to give yourself more to God and begin to follow God's ways more than you follow your ways, you're going to really see what living is all about, because you will be connected to the source of life. Again, you get more when you give more, but it's most important to understand, who are you giving yourself to? You know, Jesus, a couple of 1,000 years or so after Solomon, reiterates the same things because he should, because this is God himself. These principles, guys, are not just man-made ideas. This was God communicating these things. And the same God, when he came down in the form of flesh as a baby, then grew up to be an adult, he would continue the same things. And he would say, he was actually recorded in Acts, we can put it up, Acts 20:35. It says, remember how Jesus taught us that it is more blessed to give than to receive. Jesus would consistently taught. This was Paul speaking, and he was saying, guys, remember how Jesus would always teach. It is better, it is more blessed to give than to receive. It's more blessed to give than to receive. You get more out of life when you give more. And guys, let's be honest. You know what that's like. You know, when you truly do something for someone else, when you give of your money to a certain cause, right? When you volunteer hours, or when you do something, you share some wisdom with someone, a child or a friend, and it makes a difference in their life. When you give of yourself, of your time, of your talent, of your treasure, whatever it is, there's just a return that you get that's better than money can buy. Would you agree? Right? When you just do something wholeheartedly, not selfish, for this, for the sake of just being good, man, there's just something that you get in return that money cannot buy. So in essence, when you give, you do have a form of getting, right? And so Jesus would teach us all the time, it is more blessed to focus on others, to give to others, rather than focusing on getting, rather than focusing on receiving. The focus, guys, is obviously on not just the fact that you're giving, but the fact of who you're giving to and why. It is more blessed to give than receive. You get more out of life, guys, when you give more. I looked up the Hebrew word to give, and there was a few definitions that stood out to me. I wrote them up here. One was this: the word to give in Hebrew that they would use, especially at the very beginning, it said these things. It meant to add, to plus, to commit, to restore, and to draw out. These are the ones that stood out to me. This was the definition of the Hebrew word to give, right? To restore, to add, to plus, to commit, to draw out. It's a kind of giving, guys, that it is a commitment. This is not just a giving of, okay, I feel like it. No, it is a duty. It is a commitment. You commit to give and to live in this way. It's a type of giving that you are trying to add the most, not just anything, but the things that matter most, right? It is a kind of giving that you are willing and committed in helping to restore people, to restore what's being lost, right? To restore individuals, restore a society. It's a kind of giving that draws the best out of, that pulls the best out of somebody. That when you live this way and when you give this way, the person on the receiving end of the giving is better for it every single time. This is the kind of giving. It's not just a casual, all right, well, here's $20. All right, here's $5. Here's like a half, effort kind of a thing. No, this is some legit giving. It's hardcore giving from the heart. And guys, if we'd be honest, if we focused more on giving, especially giving our best, we would see a lot of the results that you and me are dying to see. People that they spend money on trying to get these results, but in reality, you don't have to spend money to do it. You have all that you need. It's giving of yourself. For example, look, I taught as a teacher of 9 years, still do, in homeschooling, stuff like that. And so the thing is, especially when I was working in the public school system, there was a lot of pressure of trying to comply to regulations and doing this and then doing that. And so teachers struggled with having to give more to themselves to follow regulations than they could give more of themselves to their students. Now, do you think it would be better? Do you think it would be better if the teachers could give more of themselves, more of their best to their students rather than those regulations? Of course. And then students, let's be honest, we got a lot in here. It was like, Do you think if you gave your best, instead of just putting up with your teacher, what if you served and respected that teacher? And what if you gave your best, regardless if the teacher is given their best, what if you gave your best in the classroom? And then rather than pass the time, do you think you would get more from your education if you put more into it? Yes or no? Adults, answer that for them. Yes, okay? Yes, you're going to get more out of your education if you give more. We had a conversation recently with somebody from our youth group just about this, because it was, well, when am I going to ever use this in my life? Or it's kind of boring, or this. I get it. Trust me, I was there. But we had this conversation and said, look, it doesn't matter if you like the teacher or not. It doesn't matter if you like the material or not. It doesn't matter if it's fun, okay? What matters most is that you are giving your best. Because if you're in class 8 hours a day and you are goofing off and you're not paying attention and you're not submitting your homework on time and you are not listening, then guess what? You are practicing 8 hours a day the majority of the year. You are practicing on how to achieve and be average or below average for the rest of your life, right? Because if all you do is for 8 hours is goof off and not pay attention and not work hard and go halfway and cheat and, you're not responsible, you're going to do that for 8 hours a day for 12 years? What kind of a person do you think you're going to be? And so it doesn't matter if you like the material or not. You give your best to it. You find your way. You work hard. You be honorable. You be respectful. You turn things on time. Because guess what? When you're an adult, guess what you got to do? All right? You got to turn things in on time. If there's deadlines, there's deadlines. There's this, there's that. You want to give your best. If not, they fire you, right? And so those are things that matter. If you give yourself more, it would matter more. Guys, even at the home, do you think the family dynamic would change if everybody in the house was giving of themselves more to each other than not? Right? Do you think it would be, if they gave more time, set more time aside to talk face to face rather than everybody in a room and we're all looking at screens? Do you think the family dynamic would be a little different? Do you think the family dynamic will be different if kids actually did their chores and above and beyond without being asked to do? Right? It was like, I know it's not my responsibility to take out the trash, but I'm going to do it anyways, right? That's one of the things we're struggling with my kids, right? There's like something on the ground, and I was like, hey, can you pick that up? It's right next to you. I'm like, that's not mine. I'm like, boy, I asked you. Like, I was like, what? I was like, I don't care. I didn't ask if it was yours, okay? Like, Alicia the other day, she actually said something like that. It was really funny. I'm just going to use it. I'm sorry. And so she had said that thing. I'm like, hey, take that. Can you throw away that trash? It's like, I'm not going to throw it away. That's not mine. One of our kids said that, like a 5-year-old, I think. I don't know. That's not mine. She's like, okay, fine. Then when I need to wash clothes, I'm just going to look at your clothes and be like, those aren't mine, so I'm not going to wash them. And so I'm like, wait, what? And so she, trying to like mental mind games with the 5-year-old. It was hilarious. It was awesome. And so, right? And so that's the thing. And so if we committed ourselves, what if we did our chores without having to be begged and yelled at to do? Do you think that things would be different? Do you think parents, you think it would be different if you actually, if you were more purposeful about parenting your kid than letting society do it for you? There would be a difference if you gave more of yourself to your kids. That'd be a big difference. I mean, look, the most successful companies, the most successful individuals, they do that. They are constantly giving. How can we give people a better experience? How can we give people a better product, a better service at a cheaper rate? How can we make things better? Successful companies, that's what they do. Okay, the employees, the ones that usually find their opportunities they find themselves with more opportunities, are the ones who are giving better. They're going above and beyond. They're doing what they need to do and some. Those are the ones that open up and they have more opportunities for them. And so, guys, see, you get more, right? You're going to get out what you put in. And so that's why it's so important that you give more, because that's how you get more out of life, by giving more. And if you want to see the power of giving, you don't look any further than this right here, than when somebody forgives someone. You want to see what the power of giving can do? Watch when someone truly, sincerely forgives an individual. And if you think about it, what is forgiving? You are giving something, in essence, to someone else. You are saying, I know you hurt me. I know you did this to me. I know you let me down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to forgive you. And guys, look, it's sad. I mean, even me, constantly, there are people that are walking around with burdens, stresses, right? All these things that they have in their life. And a lot of it, the root is because of these past pains and frustrations that they've carried for years. And you know what was even crazier is that a lot of these people, the people who originally hurt them, aren't even in their lives anymore, right? The people who hurt them originally are not in the same city, not in the same state. Maybe if they are, but they're not involved in their lives. Yet without them in the picture, their influence is still being felt. And it's still bothering them. It's still heavy. And so, guys, when you forgive someone, you are choosing to say, I am no longer going to rehearse this effort. I'm not going to rehearse this wound. I'm not going to continue to pick the scab of this wound. I'm not going to rehearse it. I'm going to release it. And when you forgive someone, you are actually giving a gift to someone who might not deserve it. I don't know. Right? But you also give this amazing gift to yourself, because when you forgive, you are saying, I am no longer going to let this pain, this thing affect me any longer. It ends today. I forgive this person. That, if you want to see the power, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Watch when someone truly forgives someone. It's amazing. You know, it's one quote from Henry Drummond. He says this about giving. It says, the most obvious lesson in Christ's teaching is that there is no happiness in having or getting anything, only in giving. The only happiness that you can truly find is in giving, is of being not selfish, but selfless. And the most important thing that you can give yourself to is God. And guys, to me, there was this one of the best examples of this. I love this story. It's from Walt Disney. I think it was his birthday, just a week or so ago. And Walt Disney had this term that he would always use. It was a cultural thing in the company, and they still use it today. And it's called plussing, okay? It's called plussing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. But Walt Disney was known for this one thing. He would always look at something and look at an experience like, okay, look, that's good, but I want you to plus it, okay? Plus it. I want you to plus that. Meaning, make it better, okay? Make it better. How can we make it better? And then he was always, one of the things that he always tried to do, and it was a cultural thing of his, he valued giving value to others. So he would always try to find, how can we make this better? How can we be better? How can we offer a better experience? And so Bambi was this amazing. Anybody seen Bambi? I remember Bambi, I think, was the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater, okay? I mean, horrific. Are you going to take a little child to go see it, and then the mama dies at the very beginning? I was like, wow. I mean, it's burned in my mind. I'm like, where are we? Like, what are you doing, Mom? Like, this is horrible. This is torture. And so I remember seeing Bambi, right? And Bambi, for the time, was considered groundbreaking, because they were in the same way that we see like CGIs, right? Or like the Jungle Book. I love the new Jungle Book. Everybody seen the new Jungle Book that's been out? It's awesome. I mean, it's all these animals, but they look alive. They look real. It's amazing. Well, back in the day, obviously, they didn't have computers. They had to do everything by hand. They had to draw it all. And so he would say, okay, let's do this story about Bambi, but how can we make it better? So what he would do is he would hire and train for their animators to learn how to draw animals better. So he would pay for that training. They would even, during the Bambi stuff, they would actually bring in live animals, a real deer, and walking around the studio because they wanted to see how did the animal move. And so how could they mimic those through drawings? I mean, he always tried to find a way to push the envelope. He would spend a lot of money sometimes, and people would complain. For example, one Christmas when Disneyland was, I think it just recently opened, and it was another thing he wanted to do. Walt, I forgot about this one. This is awesome. You would find him when Disneyland was being built. You would find him, kneeling down at random parts. He would just get on his knees and just look around and look at the environment, because he wanted to put himself at the vantage point of a child to see, how would a kid see this, and how can I make it better? You see that? And it was really cool. He put himself in that because he wanted to give the child the best experience possible, so he would try to put himself almost literally in his shoes, and he would kneel and try to see how this would all be. But one Christmas during Disneyland, what he wanted to do was, okay, guys, I want to plus this weekend, and here's what I want to do. We're going to put on a Christmas parade like we've never done before, okay? We're going to do it, and guess what? This wasn't in the plans, and so let's do a Christmas parade. So he, gave his vision, gave the ideas. The accountants, they did the math. It was going to cost $350,000. This was back, I don't know, the 60s or something. I can't remember when it was, when Disneyland was open. It was a long time ago. $350,000 is still a lot of money now, but it was a whole lot more then. And so the accountants were like, wow, why? Why are we going to spend all this money? I mean, this is a waste. We don't need to do this. Look, the people are already going to be there. They're going to be there. Why do we have to go above and beyond? They don't even know it's going to happen because this was going to be a surprise. No one was announcing, and Walt didn't want to announce it, that there was going to be a parade. He didn't want anyone to know. He just wanted to be a surprise. He just wanted to do it. And they're like, well, this is a lot of money. We don't have it. This is going to be hard. No one's expecting it. Just let it go, man. Let it go. Wow, I just thought about the Disney, there we go, whatever. And so I have little kids, Frozen, so that just popped in my head. And so here's what, now I can't unsing it in my head now. And so what Walt did was, okay, well, when he told them that, I was like, look, no one's expecting it. Why are we going to do this? Yeah, here's what he's quoted as saying. It says, we should do it precisely because no one is expecting it. We should do it because no one is expecting it. Our goal at Disneyland is to always give people more than they expect. As long as we keep surprising them, they'll keep coming back. But if they ever stop coming, it'll cost us 10 times that much to get them to come back. And so, see, he realized the value of plussing, that it was better to give for them, and as a company, it's always better for them to do that. Because actually it was cost effective, but it's what mattered most. It's what mattered most. And so, one other definition that popped out when it came to the word to give, which, interesting, one of the Hebrew definitions to give, it means to plus, which I thought was interesting. The Hebrew word to give means to plus. So when you give, according to the way God designed and committed you to give, it's to make things better. It's to plus it. It's to give a better experience or whatever it is, right? That's the kind of giving. But there's one word that bothered me when I saw it. I'm like, oh, God, that would be you. Oh, wow. Really? You would. One of the definitions for giving is this: without fail. Without fail. It's a lifestyle of giving and living without fail. So if all the stuff that I mentioned before, and how could you plus your environment at home, at school, and all this stuff, that was probably maybe kind of doable, but kind of hard, right? If you were struggling with, I don't know how I'm going to do that, now think about it. I just made it impossible. How can you live this way? How can you be committed to doing your best and giving your best 100% of the time, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year until the day you die. Try that. Merry Christmas, right? That's hard. That's exhausting. Like, how can anyone do that? This is the kind of giving and living that God expects, to do it without fail. Guys, I'm honest, it is. It is. But see, though we may fail to live in this way, the good news, guys, is that we have a God who does not fail to live this way. We have a God who is committed to you. We have a God who is constantly giving, a generous God who is committed to us. Okay, he is constantly giving, even when we don't notice it. And Walt would always care about the small details and stuff like that because the details added up. Guys, God is so involved in the small details of your lives. Think about this. He knows. God knows. He's not dumb. God knows that by focusing on a lot of small details in your life, he knows that you're not going to see it all. He knows that a lot will go unnoticed. He knows it. But he still does it anyways. Why? Because he has nothing better to do with his life and his time? No. See, he does it out of love. He is constantly interacting in your life. Regardless if you've invited him to or not, he is doing it. And all of the little things, he's doing it. Knowing, believing that all the little stuff is going to add up. And hopefully it'll get to enough that you'll recognize him. And that he'll get your attention. And then you realize, and the true adventure begins. When you begin to give yourself more of God. When you realize that you have a God who's already giving to you. See, Jesus said this in John 10:10. He said this one thing about the enemy, about the devil. He said that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. We talked about last week that the devil and every demon is hell-bent on getting you, okay, to get more out of life by choosing to live more for yourself and choosing simultaneously to choose less of God. Okay? And by doing that, he's going to rob you of your blessings. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive, and the enemy knows this. And so for all of us that are believers in Jesus Christ, okay, that we've been given new life, all these stuff, the devil's not done with you. Okay? Every demon's not done with you. They're going to continue to get you to focus more on everything else other than God's purpose for your life, to get confused, to get bogged down, to get busy, because then you'll realize you'll get to the end, and to them a success will have you live less of what God intended for you to live, for you to experience less blessings than possible. That's a way that they attack us. That's a way that they get at you that way. And to rob you of blessings, as many as they can. Right? And then if you are not a believer in Jesus Christ, that's the biggest blessing that they want to rob you of is eternal life. Because they want to kill and destroy God's purposes for your life. And they will do that by getting you to live more for yourself and to try to get more out of life instead of giving more to God. And they know this. And so what did Jesus come and do, though? He says, I came to give people true life. Not just life, but look at that word, abundant. More than they can handle. I'm here to give people life more than they can handle, more than they can process, more than they know what to do with. That's the kind of life I want to give people, guys. That's the kind of God we serve. And for those of you, if you're like, you know what? I'm not feeling that whole abundant life thing. Well, the problem, again, is not with God. The problem is what are we then giving ourselves to? Because he says it. You come to me, this is what I'm going to give you. This is what I'm going to give you is life, and life abundantly. And so if we're not experiencing, guys, we have to stop and ask, am I living more for myself more for God? Am I giving more of my time to everything else, and I just always consistently am finding less and less time for God? That's how when we give more of ourselves to God, again, it's you get more out of life when you give more. And I'm telling you, when you give more of your life to God, this is the kind of getting you get. Life from him. Life from him, guys. Look, we have a God who is, look at the definitions again, to give, right? We have a God who is committed to giving all of himself. We have a God who is committed to give his best for you and for me, so much that he came here and gave it all and laid it all on the line, on the cross. So that, again, look at one of the definitions for to give, so that he can restore us to new life. That's what he wants to do. All the things that have been stolen from you, guys, the things that have been robbed from you from every demon that's ever been with you your whole life, right? Your innocence, right? Your joy, your peace, your purpose, right? All of those things that have been stolen from you. God says, look, I'm not just going to give it back and match it. I'm going to outdo myself. All right, I'm going to give you more than what you had before. Whatever was robbed from you, I can restore it and give you more than you originally had. You want purpose? I give you purpose. You want joy? You thought I was joy? Let me show you joy. You thought you knew peace? Oh, let me show you peace. You think you know love? Let me show you love. You think you know how to live life? Man, let me show you true life. That's the God that we have. He's a giving God. And we have to make sure, are we giving of ourselves to him? Are we giving of ourselves to him? That's the most important question, guys, that I want you to think about. Because you know what? And this is the amazing thing, is because God is so committed, guys. And the restoring and the life that he gives, it's not just to pass the time better. And it's not just to make you better. I think Ravi Zacharias put it the best. I love this quote. He says this: Jesus does not offer to make bad people good, but to make dead people alive. That's what he offers you. That's what he's offering today. This is the gift that God offers every single day for us. He doesn't offer to make bad people good. Okay, the offer is to make dead people alive. And so this Christmas, guys, with all the stuff that we have on our plates, all the stuff that we're doing, all the money that we're spending, time that we're giving, guys, this Christmas, let's give more of ourselves to God. And let's practice that this Christmas. So guess what we do in the new year? Guess what we'll do in January? Give more of ourselves to God. And then February, what do you think we're going to do then? Give more of ourselves. Wait, hold on. In April, it changes. We give even more, right? And so there you go, right? And that's what we do. And then what we do in Christmas, we live it as a lifestyle. Because when we get more out of life, when we give more of our lives to God, when we do that consistently, okay, you're going to truly see living. So this Christmas, guys, I want to challenge you. Let's give more of your life to God. Give more of your obedience, okay? Follow his ways more than you do your own, okay? Pay attention to God's word more than you do your timeline or whatever, right? And so, listen to his voice more than you do others. Give him your past. Give him your present. And then give him your past, give him your future, and then give your best in the present to serve others. Give it away. give those things. Guys, if we live like this, okay, you're going to find something that very few can find. Right? What did Solomon say? There is nothing under the sun that can give you life, right? There is nothing under the sun that can give you life. But see, Jesus is here to say, you know what? But the Son of God can give you life. There is nothing under the sun that you can find in life, but the Son of God can give you life and can give it abundantly. Now, I don't know if that's what you wanted for Christmas originally, but it's what we need. And hopefully, now you want it even more. Because again, he is a generous God that wants to give this to us all, guys. And so, look, a life lived in this way. A life lived in this way and constantly surrendering to the Lord is one, guys, where we will find ourselves getting way more than you and me deserve. A life lived in surrender to the Lord, we'll find ourselves getting way more than any of us deserve. But you know what? But we'll keep on coming back to God because he will never fail to surprise us because God is not interested in meeting your expectations. He wants to exceed them every single time, every single day.